Greetings and salutations everyone, THEBrandonBrownson here, and I'm kicking off a brand new series today. So some of you may have seen my Edd Eddy theory video, which wound up becoming a lot more popular than I planned on it being, and I thank all of you for that. Well, I've gotten a lot of requests to talk about some other theories that have sprung up around the internet, so I'm starting this new series, which I'm going to call Theory Addict. In this new series, I'm going to talk about some interesting theories from not only cartoons, but video games as well. Now there's a couple things I want to clarify first. First of all, unless I claim otherwise, I did not come up with any of these theories. I found them around the internet from various sources. Second, I'm going to have to ask that, if you comment, don't be a troll. If you disagree or you have some evidence for or against a theory, I have no issues with you making your statements. Please do it in a respectable manner. Basically, just don't be a dick. I think that's about it, so let's get started. So I thought long and hard about what I wanted to do for this very first video, and I decided that I couldn't decide on just one theory. I am going to focus on one franchise though, and that is the Legend of Zelda franchise. There are a lot of theories to fill in some of the major plot holes and some of the things that they don't explain within this series, which is why I couldn't pick just one. So let's dive right into this. The first theory I have for you today is the Ice and Wind Temple theory. Now, the theory is that in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, originally the Forest Temple and the Water Temple weren't supposed to be the Forest and the Water Temple. Originally, the Forest Temple was supposed to be the Wind Temple, and the Water Temple was supposed to be the Ice Temple, which would have been located where the Ice Cavern is. Remnants of this are blatantly obvious in the final version of Ocarina of Time, such as the Wind part of Soraya's part of Ganondorf's castle, and Runo's part in Ganondorf's castle being very ice-themed. Also, the symbols on the medallions would suggest that these were the originals, as the Forest Medallion has an image similar to a wind-like vortex, and the Water Medallion bears the image of a snowflake. It's commonly believed that the Kokiri girl Fado was supposed to be the Wind Sage, since she's absent throughout the entirety of the adult timeline when a Master Sword leads to the power of the Sage's prayers. The identity of the Ice Sage is widely unknown, though I suspect that it probably would have been Azora, since ice is frozen water, and the Ice Cavern, which was supposed to be the Ice Temple, is so close to Zora's domain. Alright, so we all remember the guardhouse in Ocarina of Time, right? A little area where there were all those pots filled with money. Well, we all remember that in the adulthood, it became the Poe House, right? The place where the Poe Collector hung out? Well, it's possible that the guard became the Poe Collector. In Link's childhood, the guard said that he had a very strong interest in ghosts, and that his knowledge of ghosts could be useful someday. This could imply that the guard got killed in the 7 years that passed and became the Poe Collector. In Ocarina of Time, we at least get some explanation for a lot of the missing characters in the adult timeline. Most of those explanations were that they became sages. However, there were a couple of characters that never got an explanation. One of those characters was the Graveyard Kid. Well, naturally, there's a couple different theories that have popped up about what happened to him. The first and the most likely one is that the kid wound up killing himself after the death of Dampé. However, there's another one that I really like. It's way out there, and it's probably not true, but I think it's really cool. The theory is that after Dampé's death, the kid begins to connect with the Poes, and he begins to trust them. Well, finally he makes a deal with them to bring Dampé back from the dead. The Poes bring Dampé back in the form of a more humanoid ghost instead of the typical Poe, but they also give the kid a curse that makes him rapidly age. In order to break the curse, the kid needs to collect 10 giant Poes, but he's aged far too quickly. He now waits in an old watchtower in the now ruined castle, waiting for somebody to show up in the system so he can break the curse. Again, a little bit out there, but damn, that's cool as hell. Got another one from Ocarina of Time for you. Okay, we all know that the sages were teleported to the Temple of Light in the Sacred Realm. You ever wondered how that came about? Well, there's this theory going around that the way that the sages got to the Sacred Realm is through death. Let's think about it. You never end up seeing Soraya after Link becomes an adult until he sees her in the Sacred Realm. It's guessed that she went to the Forest Temple, but got killed in there, maybe by the Poe sisters. It can be presumed that Raruru was probably already dead. The last we see of Daruna is him going to fight Volvagia, yet you never see him in Volvagia's lair. So we can presume that either Volvagia ate him, or he was thrown into the lava. Impa went to battle Bongo Bongo, yet we don't see her, so we can probably guess that she was offed at some point in the Shadow Temple, if not by Bongo Bongo himself. The last we see of Nibiru is her getting attacked by Twin Rova, and the Gossip Stone says that Nibiru haunts the desert. That kind of would allude toward her death. With Ruto, it's a little bit sketchier. While you do see her in the Water Temple during Link's adult years, she vanishes at a dead end. One can guess that maybe it was her spirit that visited Link in this realm, and not her physical body. Maybe she was killed off by some of the enemies up there. However, if she was killed by monsters, what happened to her body? Naturally, there's a theory for that as well. According to this theory, their bodies vanish when they're killed and they're whisked away to the Sacred Realm. Of course, another theory is that they don't die, they just get teleported to the Sacred Realm, which is just as plausible as the death theory in my opinion. However, there's a possibility that this one is more plausible because there's one glaring piece of evidence against the death theory. In Wind Waker, it's stated that once a sage dies, they're relieved of all their powers, which really shuts down the whole idea that the sages died. While the Wind Waker evidence renders this theory null and void, it's definitely really cool, and I thought it was cool enough to share with you guys. Okay, so I saved my personal favorite out of this batch for last. There's a gaggle of theorists out there that believe that there's something more to the Ocarina of Time temples than the game lets on. The general consensus is that when you look at the architecture of the temples compared to the typical Hyrulean architecture, they don't quite line up. Hyrulean homes and businesses generally only have one giant room in them, while the temples have many rooms, halls, and corridors within them, leading some to believe that it was a different race other than the Hyruleans who created these giant temples of worship. Speaking of the temples, there's another theory floating around within the Ocarina of Time temples that maybe some of them weren't meant to be temples at all. While there should be no doubt that the Spirit Temple, the Temple of Light, and probably even the Water Temple were designed for the purpose of worship, there's something a little different about the other three temples. Let's start off with the Forest Temple. Everything about the Forest Temple suggests that it wasn't built to be a temple, but instead a mansion. The stairs, the way it looks, the designs of the room, everything points toward this theory. Naturally, it's assumed that if this is true, the Poe sisters were probably the ones that owned the mansion during their lives. With the Fire Temple, again, it doesn't look too much like a place that was designed for worship, although some of the carvings, like the dragons and stuff, could point toward this. However, if you look at it, it could be a prison, but the most widely accepted theory is that this was originally a really large mine. You can guess that the Gorons built these mines to harvest food, but either they awoke Volvagia, or Volvagia discovered the mine and made it to his own. Either way, the Gorons had to evacuate the mine, leaving it to become a temple. Then we have the Shadow Temple. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that no matter what this place was intended for, there was some freaky deaky shit going on here. Everything has been suggested, from being catacombs to a corrupt prison to a torture chamber. Some people even say that this was a concentration camp. Since it's kind of on topic, there's also a theory to how the inside of the Great Deku Tree is so complex, and that would be the giant spiders that reside inside of it. Forgive me, I can't remember their name right now. It's believed that the giant spiders burrowed massive tunnels inside the Great Deku Tree, and eventually those burrows became the massive rooms that we see inside of it. As for the water that's in the Great Deku Tree, maybe some rain leaked in through one of the tunnels? Well, folks, that's all I have for you this installment. I'd like to remind you that I did not create any of these theories on my own. They were all found on the internet from various sources. Also, I'd like to remind you that if you're going to comment, don't be a dick about it. Speaking of, if you have any evidence that proves these theories, if you have any evidence that debunks these theories, or if you have any theories that you'd like for me to talk about in a future episode, feel free to leave a comment. Be sure to like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel, because there's going to be a lot more where that came from if you guys want it. That'll about do it for me. Thank you for watching. The Brandon Brownson signing out.